Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Defiance? Well, it's an MMO, which means this is by no means gonna be a conclusive video. The chances are, assuming that I stick with the game, I'll do a few more on this particular title. MMOs are very tricky to critique, because they take a lot of goddamn time. The problem is, people don't necessarily want to wait that long for an impression. So what I'll do is I'll give you the impression that I've got so far. This is my first impression, and then there'll probably be a second first impression and a third, again assuming that I continue to play the game. If the videos stop coming, you can assume I got bored, but I'll probably wrap it up at the end by saying why I quit or whatever. That seems to be the way of things with MMOs. So what is Defiance? So it's made by Tryon, those guys responsible for Rift, which was by no means a bad game, but it was very much a WoW game. I think it's safe to say. I mean, we're talking about classes that had loads of abilities that were identical. We had a very WoW-style combat system, hotkeys, pretty much across the board. It had some unique features, however, including the Rift system, which is adapted for this title. This time around, what they've done is they have partnered up with the Sci-Fi channel, who are doing a series called Defiance, and they are making, or indeed have made, this is out right now, this is a retail product, an MMO. A third-person MMO, which is like every other bloody MMO, right? Well, it's a third-person shooter MMO. MMO third-person shooter, which is a little bit more interesting. It does have a lot of RPG in it, though, and a lot of MMORPG, more importantly. There's this common misconception... try again. This common misconception that MMORPG and RPG are the same thing. They're really not. There's a huge number of tropes and mechanics and systems that exist in MMORPGs that are not in traditional RPGs. Okay, so let's have a look at the settings, and then we'll jump into the game, and I'll show you what I've seen so far, and I'll tell you a little bit about what I feel about the game up to this point. Again, I must stress, first impressions. More so than most videos. It's an MMO, I'm not that high level. Who the hell knows, right? Who the hell knows where it goes at endgame, if it goes at endgame, and what kind of problems that you'll come into 60 or 70 hours down the road. Alright, let's have a look at settings first. So, this has been fixed, by the way. Those of you who are wondering about the video that I made, it was either yesterday or the day before, where it was a very short 5-minute video where I kind of mocked the AI in the tutorial area, and I also told you about the 120Hz bug. The 120Hz bug has since been fixed, the AI in the tutorial area has not, it is still dumb as bricks. Now, Tryon developers have claimed that this AI is deliberate. I feel that that's a very bad idea. The reason it's a bad idea is you don't teach anyone anything by having dumb AI. You want to teach someone something in a safe environment, you make the enemies less dangerous by making them either take more damage or do less damage. You don't make them behave in a weird way, because if they behave in a way that normal enemies don't in the real game, then you're going to teach people bad habits. Stupid idea, dumb AI. But I'll talk a little bit more about the AI and the aggro system a little bit later on. Settings menu not exactly impressive. I was hoping to see stuff like draw distance here, because draw distance is an issue in this game. Unfortunately, there is no option for that. There's not a lot of option for anything, really. The lack of anti-aliasing and anisotropic filtering is a little bit unfortunate. I feel you can probably push that, force it in your NVIDIA or Catalyst control panel, but it's not in the game. A decent amount of audio options, which is nice. Combat music we might have to turn off later because there's currently a bug whereby this loops till the end of time and it's really bad. What's annoying is the music's apparently done by one of the guys that was responsible for the music for Battlestar Galactica, which was that Bear McCreary, if I recall correctly? He also did the music for Dark Void, but some of it's really good and some of it's really bad. The combat music is awful, in my honest opinion, and when it starts to loop for 30 minutes, you want to strangle a kitten, so no. Aside from that, you've got this, as you can see. Can you rebind the keys? Yes, you can. Don't worry, they let you do that. And there's quite a few keys to rebind. Bear in mind, the function keys are pretty much your friend in this game. A lot of the menus are set up through there, an awful lot of them, F1 through 5, something you will need to remember. If you forget your keys, just mash F1 through 5, you'll probably find it. Vehicles, yes, there are vehicles in this game. Yes, it is an MMO, I'll get onto that in a minute. Primary and secondary weapon can also be swapped with the middle mouse button, so not really all that important. Everything else kind of makes sense. You can crouch, you can roll, you can't stick to cover, which is a little bit unusual, but I say unusual, and then you're like, what are you talking about, TV? That's ridiculous. I mean, it's an MMO. Yes, it is, but let me just show you. It's easier to show you than try and explain, because it is unusual. I haven't seen too many MMOs that play like this. But the funny thing about it is that for every part of the MMO that's new and unique, there are 5 other bits which are just straight out of the MMO whole cloth playbook. Alright, welcome to Defiance, which is not an ugly game. It's not a pretty game, but it's not an ugly game. Texture quality's not bad. For an MMO at any rate. Obviously you need to make some sacrifices in MMOs, but... you know, we look at kind of the average things, and we look for stuff that looks hideous, and we don't find a huge amount of it. Every now and again, you'll see something that's kind of low texture, you know, like that. You know, that doesn't look too great. But the texture work here, I mean, hell, you can even actually read the text there, which is fairly impressive. Most of those labels are usually just a blur. So, it's not bad. Overall, graphically, it's functional. It's not a colorful game. But then again, this is kind of post-apocalyptic, so it's not really to be expected. So Defiance is set in a futuristic world. Things have gone horribly wrong. There was some kind of invasion, and the Earth was terraformed in a very weird way. There are creatures all over the place, and they're kind of trying to rebuild. There was also an emigration of what appeared to be an alien race, and there's some... they're actually kind of working together with the humans at the moment, so... it looks like I'm being interrupted. Alright, combat system. So when I was saying it was a third-person shooter, I actually wasn't kidding. It handles like a third-person shooter, for the most part. What it actually reminds me of immediately, which is something that you guys are probably going to figure out, is Borderlands and Global Agenda. Those are the 2 games that are most similar to this. Borderlands is strikingly similar to the way that the game's loot is designed, for instance. Even stuff like the way that the skill trees work and the way that the powers work in this game, they very much remind me of Borderlands. The loot system, the way that weapons are designed, there are different weapon damage types, elemental stuff, and there's also some weapons that do some pretty wacky things. I don't think I have any that do, but hey. Except it's from a third-person perspective, not a first-person. I don't know, maybe I would have preferred it if it was from a first-person perspective, but it does give me that Borderlands vibe immediately. Not necessarily in a bad way, though. The thing I don't really like about Borderlands is that it seems like the game's almost carried by its humor, and its actual mechanics are kind of weak. In an MMO, I can forgive that a little bit more because of the scale. MMOs generally don't have as good combat mechanics as single-player or small-form multiplayer games, because they have to make compromises for the whole bloody scale of the thing. And for instance, you know, this is one of the maps I'm on. It's kind of big. I mean, this is a fairly large map here. I can ride across it on my ugly little purple quad bike here, one of the many vehicles available in this game. If I wish, I can run down mutants with it, or miss the mutant, dive off the quad bike, and then shoot the mutant in the face. That works too. There we go. Very nice. Unusual already for MMOs, really, because this is not the kind of thing that you usually see. As I said, Global Agenda, kind of, but the thing about Global Agenda is that it didn't have this open world going for it. What it had was a set of instanced missions, and this overall kind of meta-map thing going on, as well as PvP arenas. This is World of Warcraft style, or Rift style, or... I don't know, Old Republic, pretty much bloody anything, in the sense that this game has an open world and you just go wandering it, and it actually, for the most part, seems to be seamless. I don't know if, when you go from zone to zone, maybe it isn't at that point, but, oh, I'm gonna die if I'm not careful. Let's try and cloak and get out of here. That didn't work out well at all. Time to leave. Oh, roll for your life, damn it! Roll! Roll like you've never rolled before. Reload the bloody shotgun in the process. You can just wander this world. You can get on your bike, or in your Dodge Challenger, or whatever the balls the endorsement is. Yes, there is a Dodge Challenger in the game. The game is sponsored by Dodge, so there you go. And you can just go riding, and kind of like Rift, you can go most of the places you can see, as long as you can climb the hill. You can even go over it. And the vehicles make that surprisingly enjoyable. You get a vehicle about an hour into the game as well, which means that the normal, oh, you gotta get to level whatever to get a mount, kind of disappears. You get a basic vehicle from the start, and you can even level that vehicle up. I'm currently in a situation where I've got runners level 3, which gives me extra speed, extra HP, which is always nice. And you can run down basic mobs with it, which is really kind of handy. There's also achievements and experience rewards for things like that. Now, what about traditional questing? You know, I was talking about it being a traditional MMO. Was I kidding? Well, no. There is plenty of traditional questing in the game, although there's also plenty of stuff which is not what I would consider to be traditional questing. And this is more down the lines of what Guild Wars likes to do. Guild Wars 2 says, here's an area where stuff's going on, and you can choose to participate in it or not. That's the way Guild Wars 2 works. And to many degrees, that's also the way that Defiance works. As you can see right here, I ran across this area. This is an area where our guys are fighting against... Actually, I think it's the mutants that are currently fighting against the Hellbugs, which in this area appear to be the two kind of main and antagonist factions. God damn it, they're annoying as well. Here you go, I have a grenade. That didn't work out well at all. I shall just disappear for a while. Thank you very much. Let the turrets deal with it. This is just a little area where you can fight and gain some experience and gain some points for your so-called pursuits, which are kind of like meta quests. They're kind of just like big achievements, really, but they are quests in the sense that you just kind of complete them at your leisure along the way. Alright, and as you can see, I just completed that area, so I get some script, I get some ego units, I think whatever the hell they're called, and some experience. Script is the main currency in the game, although there is a microtransaction system in this game as well. For those wondering, this game is $50, and there is no subscription fee, which is smart, but there is a microtransaction store, so, you know, 2 of the big 3 are there in terms of monetization. As regards to whether or not you need it, I haven't seen any evidence of that as of yet, but who knows where it's going to go later on. You may also notice that it does get a little bit buggy from time to time. We've got stuff like disappearing cars, people floating in the middle of nowhere, animations that kind of decouple and don't really work the way that they're supposed to, stuff like that. Kind of standard MMO teething problems. As regards to AI, stuff kind of acts the way that you would expect in a traditional MMO, kind of World of Warcraft-ish. Although there are some fairly obvious differences, like the fact that there was an enemy up there, for instance. In World of Warcraft, it would have jumped down off there and run at me, or I would have shot at it and it would have evaded. That doesn't really happen in this game, and as a result, the enemies move in a more logical manner. You remember in WoW, for instance, where you shot something and it ran up a sheer cliff face to get to you because the AI in that game is basically run at what aggroed me most in the most direct way possible? Yeah, this game doesn't do that. The enemies actually act in the way that you would sort of expect from a third-person shooter. But the aggro mechanics are still there. The dumbass patrolling stuff is still there. The fact that a lot of these enemies can't necessarily see you from about 20 feet away is still there. Though if you do shoot them, which you can do, especially if you happen to have a sniper rifle with a good zoom scope, then they will get you. Or if you enter an area and trigger the mobs, then they will come at you as well. Also, these areas are chock full of monster boxes, which is not good. Monster boxes are boxes full of monsters. Oh dear, it looks like these guys are not messing around. Okay, time to cloak. Let's get out of here. Ah, yeah, that was messy. You can self-revive yourself once every few minutes. If you die again, then you've got to go back to a checkpoint. So I'm going to be a little bit more careful here. This looks like a fairly dangerous area. Ah! Time to run away. There we go. They're driving me away here. So monster boxes. There are a lot of impassable gateways and doors and trapdoors and holes in the ground whereby things pop up from. Primarily the 2 enemies that you're facing in these zones are Hellbugs and mutants. And the mutants take great joy from popping out of every possible alcove. And it is super cheap. It's a really horrible way of doing things. Although, I guess it's better than just having them spawn out of thin air. I mean, what can you really do in that situation? Especially when you're dealing with mobs that aren't really all that smart, trying to kind of make it challenging. I mean, from here, the Chancellor's not even going to be able to hit me all that much. Put a few more bullets in his head. There we go. Sniper rifle's a pretty good weapon, as you probably figured out from now. So I don't know, I always feel that whenever you go into an MMO, you've got to severely suspend your disbelief, because there's going to be a lot of janky, weird mechanics that only make sense because it's an MMO, and it's a compromise to make it work in that massively multiplayer setting. Constantly respawning enemies, because if you run out of enemies, it's no fun for the guy that comes along next, which is definitely not a good way to design your game. The idea that stuff monster boxes out of pretty much nowhere, because where else is it gonna come from? The fact that you're basically slaughtering hundreds upon hundreds of enemies. I mean, that area right there, that tent is gonna be a gigantic clown car of doom. Because what else could it be? How else would it work? Well, the answer is it wouldn't. So, I suppose I appreciate the effort to obfuscate it. There are also helicopters that come in and drop enemies in here and there, so, you know, they come up with a few inventive ways of actually having enemies appear where none exist, rather than just having them spawn out of thin air. So, you know, if it was a traditional third-person shooter, I would say that sucks. But because it isn't, it's actually, you can actually turn it into a positive and say, you know what, they're kind of clever obfuscating that, aren't they? And yeah, they sort of are, so I suppose I have to give them credit for that. But it's still janky as hell. I guess it's a problem we're never really going to get over in MMOs, is it? It's just inherent in the genre. How do you fix it without, say, using phasing technology? Hard to say. Now, let's see if the AI decides to wake up a little bit here. Now, in a traditional third-person shooter, if I was firing in this direction, that guy would come here. Looks like this guy's noticed me, so, you know, he can easily be taken out. I don't know where that guy went. There he goes. He is coming, so... As you can see, versus the tutorial area AI, these enemies are much, much more responsive. They still feel like MMO enemies, but I've got to admit, they do feel a little bit more advanced. I was talking to a dev yesterday, and he said, oh, you know, let me know when you get to areas, the AI will kick your ass. And no, it doesn't. Like, the only time it ever kicks your ass is when you get taken by surprise. And aside from that, they do fairly predictable things. I'm not seeing stuff like amazing flanks and things like that, but they will occasionally use abilities like grenades to try and flush you out of an area for hiding. There is no cover system, as I said, but you can easily crouch behind cover to absorb fire coming in your general direction. Although I have seen, if you watched my vlog from a couple of days ago, there's a piece of footage where a mutant minigunner was firing constantly in my position, but because of the position of the terrain, it couldn't actually hit me, even though it looked like it could. That was not good. That was not an ideal thing. So there are certainly some things that need to be ironed out in that respect. The question, I suppose, is this combat actually enjoyable? And the answer is, surprisingly, yes, although it depends on which weapons you're using. I find the shotguns and the sniper rifles are some of the most satisfying weapons, although the heavy pistols are pretty good too. The SMGs aren't bad, although they're a bit sprayy, and then stuff like the assault rifles and the LMGs are probably the least enjoyable weapons, but, you know, that's kind of my personal opinion. There are a lot of other weapons, including grenade launchers. There are like 4 different kinds of sniper rifle. All of these can be modified with the in-game salvage system as well, which is really quite impressive. And, of course, some of them have some interesting abilities. Let's have a look at my inventory. Now, this is just dreadful. Like, the inventory system is not good, in my honest opinion. It's not particularly well designed, and it's just a gigantic list of doom. Now, you can do comparisons, which is nice, and actually kind of vital as far as I'm concerned. So if I want to compare this to, say, that, yeah, you can do that. Although you then have to usually exit comparison mode in order, there you go, you have to click exit compare, which is a little janky again. It's something they could probably improve in terms of the UI. The problem is this interface is a giant pile of stuff, and the only way you can really, well, you can sort it by type, name, and level, which is not that ideal, especially when you've got to try and figure out what the hell a lot of this stuff actually is. What is a VOT nano fragger, for the love of God? Nobody really knows. Am I getting shot? No, it's just the menu looking weird. So I think there's a lot of work they could do here to actually improve this interface and actually make this inventory easier to manage. Thankfully, at least at early levels, you don't have a very big inventory, but as you level up, you gain more stuff. Now, there is something called the Ego menu here. This is designed for console. This game is available on console as well, so you can use this space menu if you like, but you're much better off learning the function keys. Much better. Let's have a look at some guns and things like that. I did get a few level 69 weapons. I'm currently level 69 in this game. That's not very high. You might think it sounds high. It's really not. So, I have an auto pistol here. This is probably pretty good. It's got a 1.15 crit multiplier on it. I believe it's also got a mod slot, and there's all of the stats for it. I've got a couple of others, actually. The quick repeater. That is a semi-auto sniper rifle. Damage-wise, not exactly amazing. If I were to compare it to my current, I think I'm using a deadbolt. Oh no, the VBI sniper rifle is what I'm currently using right now. Okay. So if I set that to compare, then click the VBI sniper rifle, we can see, yeah, it does less damage. It's got a significantly better refire rate, 15 rounds to a clip as well, and way less bloom. Although the crit multiplier is not quite as good. It's got a quick reload time, relatively speaking. So, you know, I might use that. That seems pretty good. Now, here comes the big issue. It's only got 2 weapon slots. Oh. Now that, that's probably one of the absolute biggest problems I've got with it. Only 2 weapon slots. God damn. And that really sucks, because there's a lot of different weapon variety in this game. I was talking about heavy pistols, LMGs, various different kinds of sniper rifles. There's like beam weapons and grenade launchers and multi-rocket launchers and all sorts of crazy stuff available in this game. And unfortunately, oh dear, no, don't bring up the menu when I'm trying to fight. That's a terrible idea. Hopefully my cloak stays. Yeah, cloak is one of the powers available in this game, and thank God that I have it. That's all I can say there. There we go. Oh, I like this weapon. It's not too bad at all. Can't really use it outside of the scope, though. It just doesn't hit anything. Aside from that, kind of nice. The limitation of 2 weapons is obviously designed with consoles in mind, and it sucks. Like, it really sucks. It's something that I hate. Being able to use 4 would be great. You know, Borderlands style is probably good enough. Maybe even more than that. But the thing is, there's so much weapon variety in this game, and since I can carry like 21 guns, but I can only have 2 equipped to quickly swap out of it at any given time. And last thing you want to do in a real-time third-person shooter, this is no turn-based or anything along those lines. The last thing you want to do is go into menus to try and figure things out. And they're not even easy menus either, because they take up the entire screen. It's not like going into World of Warcraft where you can bring up a bag while you're still fighting. Oh no. Oh no. These menus take the entire screen. So good luck. You know, if I want to... Oh, I want to equip the Nano Fragger. Okay. And then I got to pick which one I want to slot it into. Maybe I do a comparison. In the meantime, I get murdered by hellbugs. Bad system. Really bad. Something they need to work out. It's a big bugbear of mine with combat. It's a big bugbear of mine with most combat systems, honestly. This, on the other hand, is not a bugbear. The vehicles are surprisingly fun. They do not act like mounts, yeah? This doesn't just increase your speed. This has its own set of physics and its own set of mechanics. And it has a freaking jet booster on it. And I can do stuff like this. And it's fun. And you can run stuff over. And it's great. And that is one of the best additions to an MMO early on I've ever seen. It makes traveling around the world an absolute frickin' joy. And most of the time, ugh, that was weird, just kind of stuttering all over the place. That is something that you don't usually get in MMOs. Yeah, it's like, okay, traveling around the world is fun. But in the like first 20 levels where you can't do it quickly, it's a pain in the ass. You try to run through mobs here, like, you don't have a problem with aggroing mob packs here. You run them down. What a smart idea. You want to avoid fighting? You just ram your truck through them. And when I say truck, I do actually mean it. You can get a full-size military truck in this game. And you can actually drive it around. It does legitimate damage. Someone was actually using it in a big fighting event earlier to repeatedly ram this large hellbug creature. And it did damage. It was a legit... You can fight as a truck if you want. Which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But it's a nice piece of innovation. And most MMOs don't do vehicles properly. At all. Absolutely not. This game does vehicles properly, and yet is, even though it's a third-person shooter, it's got a lot of more traditional MMO mechanics. It's not like PlanetSide 2, where, you know, PlanetSide 2, you can view it as like a big battlefield, right? It's like Battlefield 3 with loads of players, persistent world, blah, 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 and, you know, and that's cool. But this is an MMO in the most traditional of senses. Yet, it's shifted the combat mechanics around. And it's taken a few ideas from games like Borderlands, which has obviously influenced it heavily, and has, as a direct result, built a solid title. At least in terms of the way that it plays. And I'm kind of surprised by it, because I don't think I expected a lot from Defiance, but as I play more of it, I'm having more and more fun with it. Initially, the game does not start off well. The tutorial area is garbage. The first few quests... What the fuck? The first few quests kind of suck, and the game is full of jank. There's a prime example. You saw creatures warping earlier. This is a kind of a sparse area. If I get to a busy area... I think there was an arc fall around it. Nah, it's gone. That's a shame. An arc fall, by the way, is a kind of a world event. It's very similar to a rift in Rift, and you get to fight world bosses with a lot of different people. There's good rewards for it. It's cool. I participated in a medium-sized arc fall earlier, and it was a pretty epic time. We fought this gigantic Firebug Hellion, which was a multi-stage boss fight. We went through different areas and extracted materials, and we all got rewarded for it. It was a good experience. It was like public quests in Warhammer Online or world bosses or just dynamic events in Guild Wars. And those kind of things give you that MMO feel. Because it was massive. There was like 100 of us there. And we were fighting. And funnily enough, the combat didn't seem to even suffer from it. There was some frame rate slowdown, of course, but the mechanics seemed to still work, which was kind of surprising. Because, again, it's not a game where you just lock onto something and press the 2 button over and over again. So the more I play of Defiance, the more I'm actually getting enthusiastic about it. I wouldn't necessarily go out and say, hey, you should buy this right now. It's an MMO. How many of you have been burned by MMOs early on? So many of you have been burned. Please, please don't get burned by MMOs. You know, be very, very careful. Be cautious about what you want to do and research an MMO heavily before investing. Thankfully, this doesn't have a sub fee, so the worst you lose, I guess, is $50, $60, but... The problem is a lot of MMOs are front-loaded, and I'm especially worried about this one because it was basically on Sci-Fi Channel's timescale. Yeah? Not on... I mean, it must have been, right? It wasn't on the timescale of Tryon Worlds. Sci-Fi wants to release this series, so they need the game out. The whole point is that the game and the series actually combine together in some way. And one influences the other, which is a very unique idea, something that I haven't really seen done before, which is kind of cool. Speaking of kind of cool, time trials. There's a lot of different little mini-game side missions, very much like DC Universe Online, and they're welcome distractions. Some of them suck. Like, I did a rampage earlier, and it was just like you ran around with an LMG with 9,999 ammo and shot a bunch of stuff. It was boring as sin. But the time trials are actually pretty good. They're balanced as well, because they all give you a specific vehicle to do it on. So even if you're in a faster vehicle, like the pre-order Dodge Challenger Red Edition, then you'll be fine. It won't actually make that much of a difference, because everyone gets this silly little quad bike in order to do it. They're not particularly difficult, at least not the early ones, but they're a nice bit of fun, and also they have leaderboards with names of players, so you've actually got something to beat. That should have been pretty good. How someone did this in like 30 seconds, I don't know. Sweet. Upgrade. Very nice. This is silver reward. 50. How do you do that in 36 seconds? There's no way. There's no way. I call hacks on that guy. That guy's got like 10 seconds more than anybody else. That guy's clearly cheating. Anyway. So, can show you level ups. So, the ego system, an ego rating is your levels system, yeah? There are items which are level specific. Speaking of items, we can have a look at that as well. Headgear and outfit all seem to be very much cosmetic. I've got this silly little helmet here, and I'm using the Nolan Arc Hunter outfit. I could also wear that if I like, which just looks silly, and I prefer this leather jacket. Or I could look like that, which looks even dumber. Let's wear the leather jacket. I don't think any of this stuff actually gives stats. What gives stats is your shield, and actually that's kind of about it. And your weapon, I suppose. There's no real equipment or gear that you can wear otherwise. There are also competitive loadouts available. This is designed for PvP. I haven't tried that yet. I'll probably show you it in a future video. So it all kind of depends on your weapon, and it depends on your shield. Again, very Borderlands-esque. There also appear to be perks that you can equip here. Not really sure how that works yet. As far as I know, I have access to... As far as I know, all of these work, but I could be wrong here. These are all categories, and oh, I have upgrades available as well. That's nice. So, when you start the game, you are asked to choose one of 4 different ego powers. This is the one I chose. I chose Cloak. There is Decoy, Overcharge, and Blur. Yeah? They're all pretty good for different styles, and you'll eventually be able to unlock all of them, one assumes. In fact, I actually have an ego unit available. Can I unlock a power? Or is that simply for upgrades here? I guess not. As you build out, you gain perks that are based around the power that you chose. So almost kind of like the sphere grid system, and you'll see like there's the power rating you need to get out that far. If I took this, then, you know, the stuff towards the middle is the really, really good stuff. So that kind of makes sense. Some of them are fairly interesting. Some of them are kind of boring, like energy surplus plus damage. Ooh. Yeah, you know, after your shield fully recharges, you get a little bit more damage. Okay. Follow through. This is kind of interesting. You get this one. After you do a critical kill, you get a 25% increase in melee damage for 10 seconds. So that's pretty cool if you want to play. I think if you're playing kind of a shotgun or SMG fighting style, then that might be pretty good for you. There are certain shotguns and SMGs that also give you melee upgrades, kind of like bayonets and things like that. Gunslinger, crit multipliers. So, you know, there's a mix. Some of it's pretty good. Some of it's kind of boring, but that's kind of fine. I think I might grab that. Or I could upgrade an existing one. Upgrading drop chance seems to be a kind of good idea. Or I could increase my critical multiplier here. Plus critical multiplier when enemies are coming at you. Very good for me because I use shotguns a lot. So, you know what? I might upgrade that. There we go. Sweet. Now, the problem is that this is something I just realized, that I haven't actually equipped any of these. So, now I have Nerves of Steel equipped. I wondered why none of these were actually helping me in any way. I guess that makes sense. So what else do I want to do? More damage from behind enemies, energy surplus, crit multiply when firing from the hip. I do quite a lot of that, but then again, I also have a sniper rifle, so maybe from behind. I mean, I have cloak, so that's always good, so let's equip that one as well. And as you go down, you're going to get the ability to equip more perks, and you can swap them out at any time. You can also respec, so you got quite a lot of flexibility there. But it's definitely not a hugely fleshed out MMO-based system, and honestly, it doesn't even look like they're trying to do that right now. Other stuff, you can upgrade your grenades, you can get better stuff there, you can upgrade your shields, they all do different things as well. This one's pretty good at recharge speed. This one, on the other hand, has got bigger capacity, and there are some shields that have some special effects. My weapons, I mean, this one's a pretty good gun. This is probably the best gun I've got, although I think it seems like the durability on this thing is wearing out. I don't know how you actually repair this, if you even can. You can see this one actually reloads stowed weapon clip upon kills, so it's pretty sweet. I like that a lot. It's a nice item considering you can burn through quite quickly on that, and that's the semi-auto sniper rifle that I was using earlier. This I don't really know about too much. It is I suppose it's the crafting system of the game. It allows you to basically break down weapons, modify them with parts and things like that. Some stuff can be modified quite extensively depending on the mod slots available. I think, like, the quick repeater maybe has one mod slot that you can change, so you can swap out things like barrels and stocks and so on and so forth, which is quite nice. So I guess you can create later on your perfect weapon, as it were, which is kind of neat. You can also see that I've got a bunch of boosts here. I think it was because I got hold of the Digital Deluxe Edition or whatever out of curiosity. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that at all, by the way. It's very expensive, and what you get is really kind of rubbish. So, yeah, I wouldn't really do that. Also notice, once again, very much Borderlands 1-esque system. This is the list of weapons and weapon types that are available. There's some pretty cool stuff here. Infectors, for instance, that supposedly infect an enemy with a parasite that pops out of them. Rocket launchers. There are a couple of different types of semi-automatic rifles, sniper rifles there, combat shotguns and pump shotguns, and sword-off shotguns. So there are 3 types there. And as you level them up through use, you gain more stuff. And there are factions, too. So that's pretty cool. This game also uses ammunition, which is fairly unusual for an MMO. Usually you can just fire till the end of it. Nope. There are different types of ammo. So it really is like they took Borderlands and applied it to an MMO in a post-apocalyptic setting. And you know what? It actually kind of works. And it works pretty damn well. And I think the thing about it is that in my honest opinion, because it's an MMO, rather than relying on kind of your friends, 3 or 4 friends to run around or playing a single-player campaign and a story that's driven largely by dumb jokes, the game actually works pretty damn well for me. It's something that I can appreciate. Also, the way that the missions work, kind of like Guild Wars 2, does lead you into playing with others, which is good. I mean, that's actually pretty important, I feel. Because events are just there and they just kind of happen, you need to cooperate with others in order to succeed. Wow, you know what I was talking about, Borderlands? Yeah, that's a Borderlands enemy if I ever did see one. Oh, yes, absolutely. There you go, have a grenade. Love that. Absolutely. Fantastic. Sweet. There we go. So you do end up meeting people on your travels, especially if you end up in an Arkfall event, because you'll always find people around those, because it's a very, very worthwhile thing to do in terms of grabbing cash. It's going to be a little bit difficult. Maybe I can back off and switch to my sniper rifle. Maybe I can put a shot over his head. Ugh. For those wondering about whether the combat mechanics actually hold up, they're actually surprisingly enjoyable. Like, it does feel like a third-person shooter. The combat and the shooting does not feel janky, and I think that's... Oh god, this is a terrible idea. That's one of the kind of the greatest accomplishments, I think, of this game. Where it could have gone so horribly wrong, they actually succeeded in making an enjoyable combat system that does not rely on hotkeys, and actually stands up against other third-person shooters. That is impressive, because this is an MMO, and you would expect a lot of compromises to be made in order to make the combat system work. And you know what? They actually kind of didn't make that many compromises. They said, you know what? We can make a third-person shooter that's an MMO too. Apparently, yes, they can. And we're not just talking about lobby-based MMOs either. There's plenty of free-to-play games that call themselves MMOs these days. No, it is a true MMO. It has got all of the characteristics of one. You spawn in the starting area and there's like 100 other people there on exactly the same bike as you are, doing the same quest as you are, which, you know, is janky, old-school throwback nonsense. I mean, the game's kind of full of that, really, even in the way that the aggro mechanics work, but you can do some neat stuff. You know, you can't do this in other MMOs and actually have it be effective. You know, having to attack that guy from the rear, for instance, getting a height advantage on him. There's even a perk that actually gives you more damage if you get a height advantage. I can fire over his shield. This guy has proper hitboxes. You see that? You know, it's actually hard to not be impressed. Yeah, and this is after a very early negative first impression. Once you play a bit more of this game, once you can get over the fact that it's got its issues, there's no real doubt about that, it's actually a surprisingly good time. And I think that I'll probably play enough of this to make the purchase worthwhile. I don't know how long I'll play it for. I never do with MMOs. I generally don't really have the time, but even just kind of riding around the zone and just shooting stuff, because the combat is that enjoyable, is worthwhile, and you get stuff for it, and you come across random missions and stuff like that. So, Defiance is actually turning out to be a surprisingly good time, and that is not what I expected. I mean, come on, did anyone really expect great things from a TV tie-in? Maybe I shouldn't have underestimated Tryon Worlds. Maybe that was my mistake. They are an experienced developer, and even though I didn't really like Rift, I can appreciate what they did with it. I can respect it. And now we have something that's a little bit different. Taking influence, of course, from other games. Borderlands, Global Agenda, Fallen Earth, Earthrise, things like that. All games that, at least in terms of MMOs, have not done all that well. Borderlands, of course, a very successful game, but you know what? Defiance might actually end up being a pretty solid MMO, and one of the most solid MMOs we've really seen in a while. It has its problems. Don't get me wrong. It has its problems. You've got to get over a lot of the MMO side of things. You know what? I think maybe when I did that little video on the AI, that was... I don't know what my expectations were. I think I expected, because it was a third-person shooter, that the AI would act in the way of a third-person shooter. Which, that's not an unreasonable expectation. It's still a third-person shooter. It doesn't matter if it's an MMO. It's still a damn third-person shooter. But I think after you think about it for a while, you can see, well, even though this AI is dumb as bricks, you can excuse it because that's how it works in other MMOs as well. And you've got to adjust your expectations, at least to some degree, around what MMOs actually are. And the funny thing about this game is that even though it incorporates so many of those elements, it is, at least to some degree, trying to defy what it believes MMOs are and what it wants MMOs to be. And that's neat. And I appreciate that, and I respect that. And I'm going to play some more Defiance. So, I don't know if I can recommend it yet. Because, hey, early zones, who the hell knows, endgame might suck, blah, 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 blah. But right now it is a game that I am having fun with. That has its problems that seem to be getting fixed at a fairly rapid rate. Developed by a bunch of guys that know what they're doing with MMOs. And I can ride over stuff in a quad bike. And my quad bike can do this. Just saying. My name's been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you next time.